Hello and welcome to the Sporticos Football Stories podcast. Today is Thursday, the 23rd of May, 2024. I'm Craig Resnik-Hanson, and today I'm joined by Dan Fudge, host of Sheffield Wednesday fan podcast, The Wednesday Week. We get into all things Wednesday, including Dan's journey falling in love with the club, recent years on and off the pitch, and much more. Sit back, relax, and enjoy our chat with Dan Fudge. Hi Dan, how are you doing today?
Yeah, not so bad. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much for coming on, mate. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on with us today. Let's get into some fandom. So, you're a Sheffield Wednesday fan. You are a host of The Wednesday Week on YouTube and across all the major platforms.
Yeah.
If anybody wants to check it out, which I would encourage them to do so. Let's get into, first of all, as we usually do with our guests, how did it all start for you? How did your love of football in general begin?
I wasn't into it at all. I got into football really late. I used to have a friend at school, one of my best pal when I was at junior school, called Dave Marshall, and he had a season ticket. And the conversations they all used to have, I felt really excluded. So part of me wanted to try and learn about it. And then as time went on, when I'd go and visit my grandfather, my mum's dad, my mum's brother, well, my uncle and his pal and my granddad used to just leave on a Saturday around like 1 o'clock, 12 o'clock to go to the football. And as I'd started to consume it, I got really jealous. I was like, where are they going? Why haven't they got to sit around and watch Nana and eat biscuits and drink tea like I have to? And so, I expressed an interest in it there. And then as I got, and then as time went on, I then started going with them. So there was the four of us started. We had a season ticket in the Cop from the early 90s. And when Sheffield Wednesday win what's now been their last major silverware in 1991, it kind of helps solidify your, which club you're going to support as a 10-year-old. And then we went to the two cup finals in 93, both against Arsenal, lost them both. And that was me hooked. Me being of that age where you want to consume football, and Sheffield Wednesday actually being quite good at the time, kind of went hand in hand. I assume now, given the way that the last 25 years have gone, that there might be a lot of Sheffield United fans more in kids' schools, you know what I mean, than there was back then.
It sounds like it was a perfect crossroads, you getting into it and the club having some success at the same time. Is there a particular moment you can identify when things really, like you said, when you really got hooked? I mean, sometimes some of the people we speak to, it's a particular goal they saw, a particular game. It might just be one of those few seasons that you mentioned when, we all get taken as kids. And in the beginning, we might be sort of, we're interested, but, we're looking around as well at the fans. And we're just sort of, we're not like completely hooked. But then something will happen, and then you're like, oh, my God, I'm going to this every week. This is my thing now. Have you got anything that you remember being that moment for you?
I don't know, because I'm one of those rare football fans where I don't support the same team as my dad. So growing up, my father was a Leeds fan. But, from my mum's side of the family, obviously, I'd chosen Sheffield Wednesday by this point. But what we did, the pair of us, we could agree to go and watch Rotherham United. So we used to go to the old Tavali ground to spend that time with each other as we did. And I knew I absolutely loved it. And my first game that I went to was Rotherham United versus Swansea City. And Rotherham smashed them 4-0. And I was and just like you were saying, it's weird you bring it up, that moment where you're looking around and people are so passionate and so angry and so invested in something, and you're like, how are people into this? How? And then you kind of listen to the you consuming the game, and you're like, this is a soap opera. Your emotions are up and down and left and right through an hour and a half period, and that was me hooked. So when I started going to Sheffield Wednesday, obviously going from the Tivoli ground in Rotherham to go into Hillsborough, which was at the time something like 3.5 times bigger. It was all of those emotions and all of that soap opera that I mentioned before is now 3.5 times louder and bigger and more exciting. And that first time, there's loads of videos of kids coming up the stairs and looking around and going, wow, what is this? I definitely had that moment at 11 years old.
Yeah, it would make sense that you would have that at Hillsborough as well, one of the most historic, famous old grounds in the country. I wanted to ask you about Hillsborough.
Mhm.
We hear a lot of talk nowadays about stadiums, grand old stadiums that are needing work, up and down the country. A lot of them are getting, new grounds or they're renovating their grounds. Old Trafford is always mentioned. How is Hillsborough doing? What kind of state is it in? Because obviously, as I'm not a Sheffield Wednesday fan, I'm not invested in the Sheffield Wednesday Twitter. So is it a topic at all, the ground at the moment?
I don't think it's ever stopped being a topic the last 35 years I've been in the away end's a mess. The North Stand only, in terms of relativity, only recently had wooden seats taken out of it. The catering's an absolute mess. The staffing's a mess. The arrangement of the road outside is a mess. A lot of people talk about these grand old stadiums, and ours is great. It's amazing, but we've had to remove seats from a corner section that we've got because it's not safe. There's rumours around our North Stand not being safe over the next couple of years, and a lot of money needs to be sent into that. Between you and me, if our chairman in chief in charge decided he wanted to move to a big stadium closer to the city centre, I don't think I'd be mega unhappy about it. But I do like the four sides. I don't like the bowls. I like that there's an end and a ground, and I like that the away fans go in a specific end. You spoke before and asked me about moments that hook you in. I remember we played Liverpool in the Premier League, and we were 3-1 up, and it was in the early days of Michael Owen, and they ended up bringing it back to 3-3. And the noise that washes over when you're in that ground from the away fans, that you see them jump, and then the delay comes over and it washes out. It's absolutely incredible. And I kind of don't want to lose that, but there's also a point where train stations kind of govern a city in terms of football, and you can walk from the train station to the other team in Sheffield, but you can't from ours. It's a bit of a song and dance to get to it, and I'd rather be in the city centre because I'd feel more part of Sheffield. But that's purely from a selfish perspective because I don't live in Sheffield anymore.
On the subject of fans in the ground, obviously they are one of the most important, if not the most important part of the experience, especially as a kid, like you said, when you first get into it, but throughout, home and away fans, that is. One thing I wanted to know about was, how would you describe, from your point of view, your fan base? Because, there's a difference between the fans in the ground and the fans on Twitter in every club. And I know from the club that I follow, which is Warsaw, and we're in League Two, and I go, I'm a season ticket holder there. And there's a lot of, debate about are the fans loud enough on the day, or are they too negative, too moany? There's a lot of sort of toxicity inside the fan base where the fans are like angry at each other, which is pretty interesting. I feel like that's growing, especially online. But each club is different. Some clubs, they have a really great harmony, everyone together. If you could sum it up in a few words, how would you describe the Wednesday fan base right now?
Fiercely loyal to the point where we're being gaslit as a fan base. It's absolutely incredible. To get away tickets is an absolute nightmare. Being an expat from Sheffield and moving away, you become essentially an away supporter sometimes, depending on what part of the country you live in. And so on that respect, we are fiercely loyal. But with that comes a level of expectation. It took us a number of years to come to terms with, with not being a Premier League team anymore. But we did have a Premier League fan base. So when we went down in 2000, it took us a good 5 or 6 years to realise, hang on, we're not as good as what we thought we were. And but we have that thing that I think every football fan is the same, where we go, oh, it'd be classic Sheffield Wednesday if this happened. It'd be classic Walsall if this happened. It'd be classic Manchester United if that. Everybody says the same, right? We all have the same rubbish jokes. But with Sheffield Wednesday, there is a a malaise in terms of the fact that for years we've turned up, for years we've paid our money, and we're the most expensive season ticket in the league, alongside Leeds United. We've paid our money, we've done our bit, we've sang our songs, but we're not being rewarded for it in terms of transfers and the way it's manifested itself on the pitch, and that's where it can get really toxic. So, on one hand, it's incredible. Like the noise is outstanding. I don't need to tell you about the 5-1 Peterborough comeback in the semi-final of the playoff last year.
That was crazy.
Yeah, I mean Hillsborough was absolutely rocking, but when it's not rocking and we've got the mug on, I wouldn't want to be a player on that pitch.
Turning to things on the pitch in
Mhm.
particular, in the grand scheme of things, then now that the dust has settled, how happy are you with how things have turned out this season?
The last 2 years has been odd because there's been a groundswell to try and there's been groups of fans wanting to get the chairman out, and there's been a groundswell of positivity through the summer. So, for example, after the comeback against Peterborough and then winning in the last seconds against Barnsley at Wembley, we're all having a good time. And then by the time the season starts, our manager's departed because he couldn't agree terms with the chairman. We've now got in Chisco Munoz, who didn't win a game during his tenure in charge. So all of a sudden, all that great feeling around the club was dwindled within about 4 months. It was gone. And that's without playing any football, really. Um, and then we got in Danny Rule, where the fortunes had turned round. So by the end of this season, there's a feel good factor once again. And we've just heard reports this morning, as we're recording this right now, that he's just signed a 3-year contract. So we're all buzzing. We're all having the best time again. But I can't wait to see how the chairman manages to F that up by the time the season starts. So we're up and down at the minute. On the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away on in terms of where we are on the mugonometer as a fan base.
It's a roller coaster, and especially in the EFL. God, I feel like every month it's at every club it just goes up and down. So great, just such a like bipolar existence being a fan of an EFL club in particular. But speaking of Danny Roll,
Mhm.
I wanted to ask you then. Obviously, he's done an amazing job to turn things around. There's a lot of eyes on him. He's young, dynamic coach. Very, very, very interesting. But do you think he's the man who can lead the club to bigger and better things? What are the sort of expectations and the optimism ahead of next season for him?
This guy's the real deal. This guy knows what he's talking about, knows what he's doing. We've got stalwarts in our team. We've got older players. And when players like Barry Bannon coming out in the media, not long after Danny had been given the job, saying, I'm learning things. I'm learning new things about football. I mean, for all intents and purposes, let's be honest, the guy's a nerd. He's 34 years old, and he's managed to learn football to an extent where he's managed to rescue one of the biggest lost causes in football over the last few years. So, the guy's a mega nerd, and he's 34, 35 years old, and I don't mind. I'd rather have a geek in charge than some crusty old dinosaur, and that turns players down because you don't get a feeling. I feel like we're moneyballing it a little bit, not in terms of chucking money at it, but in terms of working on the stats and the probabilities, rather than, well, I don't know if his attitude's going to fit in, and you know what I mean, and all that nonsense. It's just, this is what the stats are. This is how to play football. This is what it is. And like I said, if we've got some of the elder statesmen in our team saying, I'm learning, and this is new, and let's not forget about the unquantifiable as well, the attitude adjustment that he managed to instill into the team. So, we're 14 games in, we've not won a game, and Danny's managed to come in and get their tails up and put in some fight and some desire and some passion, something that we've not seen since the Wembley final. So this guy's going to be a mega star, and his name's going to get mentioned every time a new job comes up, I'm afraid.
Well, so going back in time a little bit, right now things are optimistic. As we said, that goes up and down 100 times a season, let alone over all the time that you've been following the club.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say have been the highest high? What's been the highest high and the lowest low of your time as a fan of Sheffield Wednesday?
Oh, the highest high. I mean, obviously you can get some recency bias in the Peterborough comeback for me was a lot better than the Wembley final because that Wembley final, albeit it's great to turn around and say, look, we beat one of our local rivals with 3 seconds to go. That's amazing, right? But the Peterborough comeback was something special. It made me feel things that I'd not felt in 30 years since being a little boy on the Cup because I saw a bounce in Hillsborough. I saw, grown men salivating and screaming and I was like, wow, this is amazing. So yeah, that's one of the highest highs. Getting to Wembley back in 2016, that was a really, that was incredible. And to be 90 minutes away from the Premier League and to lose to a absolute scorcher of a goal against Hull City, which pains me to say, was amazing. And it really is something else to be part of that. What I could do without is the ticket nonsense. You know what I mean? You've probably seen it online yourself, where it's like, I've been going for 30 years, but I have been in the last 10 years. I deserve a ticket. Of course you do, Bob. Of course you do. That's how it works. You know what I mean? And this is ridiculous. I can't get a ticket for my dad. He's not been since 1972, but I want to take my dad. Well, what about all these? You know what I mean? I can't deal with the ticket fiasco anymore. But with the Peterborough comeback, the fact that more people turned up for that game, already being 4-0 down after the first leg, impressed the hell out of me.
The ticket stuff is crazy. Like we don't usually have too much of that trouble, obviously, because we only like half fill our ground because we're in a real low point, considering compared to I've been following for 30 years or whatever, and over 25 years, and this is definitely a low point. But a couple of years ago, it was either last season or the season before, I can't remember. We played Leicester in the FA Cup at home. I think it was when they were in the Premier League. So
right, big fixture,
and it was fourth round maybe. And that was when you saw on Twitter that whole thing about, this is a disgrace. I go every week and I can't get in the ground, and so is going, and so don't deserve to go, and everyone fighting over, who should get to go and who shouldn't. And I suppose in our case, it was a good problem to have, the fact that it was actually packed out and there was a reason to argue.
Yeah. My favourite one is celebrity fans. Is when you've got a celebrity fan and they announce that they're going, and then the slew of comments on the bottom of it saying, "How many points has he got? How the bloody hell you going? And my dad's not going, even though he's not been since 1962." Okay, absolutely slaughters me. The point system is the fairest way of doing it. And do I wish that we were in a position as a club to being able to, if you've got the right amount of points and a +1 ticket, that'd be really useful. But there's just too many people wanting to go because we've got such a loyal fan base. And like you say, it's a nice problem to have because we're selling out these Wembley and we're getting more tickets, right? That's a great position to be in. But I'm sorry, it's like when it's like voting. You only really vote for the way that benefits yourself, and when it comes to whinging online about tickets, some people are a little bit self-unaware.
Yeah, it's very transparent, like when people come on there and say, I think it's a disgrace that these, when you go to Wembley, for example, that's an example when we've been in the FA Trophy or in playoff finals and stuff, and you will get that, half of these going on, even real fans, and I couldn't get a ticket and stuff, and it's like, you might have a point, but the truth is, you not getting the ticket is the reason for the post, right? You know what I mean? If you have a ticket, that tweet isn't happening. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
that's the reason.
Exactly that. The lowest low for me personally, I know some other people might disagree, but it was the last game of the season in 2010. We were playing Crystal Palace Championship, and essentially it was a winner-takes-all game. If we beat Crystal Palace, we stayed up, and if we drew or Crystal Palace won, we went down. The game was 2-2. Really good game of football, really exciting. You could, the passion and the tension was absolutely palpable. You could chew it in the air. And again, big old rocking full Hillsborough. I got the last 2 tickets in the entire stadium at the back of the Kop. The view was absolutely horrendous. I've never stood up there before, and I don't think I ever will again. But that moment in a second where the full-time whistle goes and your head drops and you've got some of their fans celebrating on your pitch and then things like that. A really heartbreaking moment to get relegated again back to League One when 10 years prior we were in the Premier League, and you're absolutely devastated in that moment. But what made it worse, Craig, was that I lived in Croydon at the time, and I had to travel up and back down with the Crystal Palace fans. So, on a personal level, that can get in the bin.
Oh well, let's put aside all of your terrible and happy memories of Wednesday, and talk a tiny bit about international football. So
Yep.
as we head into the summer, it's always a long old wait for the new season to come around, but it's always nice, at least I think, when you've got a World Cup or a Euros in there just to keep you a little bit entertained. But what kind of fan are you when it comes to that? Because some people are very, I suppose, I'll watch England, but really I just can't wait for the next season. Or are you a keen England follower? How are you feeling about the Euros?
I'm the former up until the first whistle of the first game. You know what I mean? So for example, I'm like, bloody England. I've got no affinity with the England team. There's not been a Sheffield Wednesday player in a tournament in a number of years. Well, what am I wasting my time with this for? It's just an excuse for fans, the small clubs, to cheer on some good players. And then that first whistle goes. I'm like, yes, England, we're winning the whole thing. It's all happening. It's coming home. Up the Lions.
Oh god, yeah, I think you're in the majority there. I think it's like I spend most of my time between now, this sort of like low period, just looking at who have the club released and retained.
Yeah.
Are there any transfer rumors? What's going on? It's all still about the club. The Twitter is still very much a popping. And then I'm not really like hyped. I don't care about England news or trailing or anything like that. I have no interest at all. But then, like you say, as soon as the first game kicks off, I'm well into it.
Yeah, even if England aren't even playing, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The first game's something like Scotland. Is it Scotland, Germany or something like that?
It is Scotland, Germany.
And I'm like, well, I'm not bothered. To Scotland, Germany, they hate us. As soon as that first whistle goes, I'll have watched the build up. I'd have probably even had the sticker book by then. I like it. But as soon as that first whistle goes, I've lost my mind. I'm Johnny Football once again. And then I'll be like, and then about 2 weeks in, I'll be like, oh shit, yeah, Sheffield Wednesday is a thing. I forgot about them, even though I've been doing this podcast for 14 years. You know what I mean? But yeah.
Oh, well, before we finish, mate, let's do a little bit of quick fire. So, you don't have to think too much about it. Favorite Wednesday player ever?
Emerson Tome.
Favorite current player in the squad?
That's a tough one. Marvin Johnson.
Favorite manager ever?
Oh, I have to say Ron Atkinson, don't I? I think that's the rules.
Favorite match you've been to and watched in person?
Peterborough, 5-1.
Or recency bias, you think, or?
Nah, it absolutely bloody mental. I mean, there's some old school Premier League games that I could probably think of, back in the days of Paolo Di Canio and Benito Carboni et al. But that one was insane. I've watched 6 goals for God's sake, and I was up and down like a pair of kangaroos in the mating season. It's everything you want from a football game, innit?
Even as a neutral, it's like, I don't know, you just love to see that kind of, because I remember watching it again with nothing at stake for me, obviously. It's just that seeing something happen that you're already like, it's impossible that it could happen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you're not even really watching, you're on your phone, you're like, oh, okay, that's, this ain't really very exciting. And then all of a sudden, it's just crazy. And it doesn't matter what level it is, whether it's Liverpool versus Barcelona or whether it's, League One playoff semi-final. It doesn't matter what it is, what level. Just seeing something so improbable start to happen and the momentum start to build and the other teams start to creak and the fans, it's crazy.
And to beat, the son of Alex Ferguson in what you'd call Fergie time, and to be part of a reminder of why we love football. That's one of those games where you're like, God, the soap opera here is why I love this game. And for Sheffield Wednesday to be part of that reminder meant the world to me.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, you could, if you were gonna, if you just got with your other half, for example, you've just, you've got a new girlfriend or something, you're 6 months in, and you want to try and get them into football. Yeah, showing them when say it's back in the day when you're in the Premier League and you win 2-0 against
Bolton or something. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, technically that's a bigger achievement, whatever, but like she's not gonna no one's gonna care about that. It's just routine. Whereas if you show them, like you said, the soap opera, the drama, that's what gets people hooked.
Yeah, even it weren't even just a battering. I mean, we scored an own goal in extra time, and then we had to score again. You know what I mean? It was brilliant. It was brilliant.
Well, I'm really pleased that I got to give you that little trip down memory lane. Not the distant memory, but still,
not too
nice
far.
to relive it. Thank you so much for coming on, Dan. It's been such a pleasure talking to you. I hope you enjoy the summer and the Euros, and good luck for next season.
Well, I'm still not bothered about the Euros right now. How long have I got before I start before Germany Scotland? So
14th of June, I think.
There you are.
You got a little bit.
I've got about 3 weeks before all of a sudden I'll start giving a toss. But it's been an absolute pleasure, Craig. Thanks a lot, man.
Cheers, mate. Thanks so much for listening to the Sporticos Football Stories podcast. It was such a pleasure speaking to Dan today. We can't wait to bring you more chats with fans from across the footballing landscape, from ex-pros to bloggers, YouTubers, and much more. If you've enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing. If you really liked it, give us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts. That will really help us out a lot. And we catch you next time on the Sporticos Football Stories podcast.